And we're live for another episode of Being Human. I'm delighted to say I'm here with Sam Believ. He's joining us all the way from the Colombian countryside. He is the founder of LaWayra Retreats. I think I've got that roughly correct. Ayahuasca retreats. He's got a fantastic story to tell. From having been an engineer to somebody who's now running ayahuasca retreats in South America. I can't wait to dive into your story and to your perspectives on healing and how we can use some of these gifts from nature, let's say, to accelerate ourselves and coming to wholeness and finding peace in our lives. So huge warm welcome to the show, Sam.
Thank you for having me on, Richard.
Okay, so I'd love to start from the start. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and the early phase of your life. Before you got to the point of doing what you're doing now.
So thank you for asking, and it's interesting because I have a very unusual story for someone who runs an ayahuasca retreat. Like you would not generally expect. People get surprised, but I was actually born in Soviet Union. My first 3 years, I was a communist, not by choice, but
a baby communist.
Yeah, and those were the best years of my life because obviously I had my mom and the milk and everything. But then Latvia got independent from Russia, and I grew up in sort of gray, cold Latvia, and had a pretty traumatic upbringing. You know, as a common in Eastern Europeans, you get an alcoholic father, abusive, and then mother that is abused and depressed and sort of emotionally unavailable. And it kind of formed me in such a way that I quickly learned that life is difficult and emotions are bad. So I turned all of my emotions down. In my career choice, I also didn't have much choice because in Latvia, you have three choices. You either know people and you become a politician, or you want to be a criminal, or you want to be a seafarer. Those are the three only ways to get somewhere in life. So I became a seafarer, and I started working as a marine mechanical engineer on ships first, and then in offshore oil and gas. And I quickly went to the top of my career, and I quickly bought myself everything that you should buy to be happy, a house and a car, and I had a girlfriend and vacations, but the happiness never came. So I started asking questions, and that brought me to quitting my job, quitting my relationship, and traveling. I took a sabbatical, and I went to travel in South America. My travels brought me to Colombia. I loved it. I then returned, and I returned again. Eventually, I never left. And when I was in Colombia, I first tried ayahuasca, first out of curiosity. And then when the COVID started, I actually moved to the countryside synchronistically, like it was never a plan. And there everything, all of my trauma and all of my issues caught up with me because first time ever, I wasn't busy working, traveling, and all of my emotions, all of my problems, they just all caught up to me, and I became extremely depressed. So I sought out ayahuasca again, but this time for healing. And it just changed my life, gave me purpose, and not immediately. It was a process, but if you'd asked me 10 years ago, like, what would you be doing? And if somebody would tell me I'll be running an ayahuasca retreat in Colombia, I'd ask you, what is ayahuasca and where is Colombia? But look at me now, and so you never know. You never know what's going to happen. But that's my story in a nutshell.
Right. Well, first of all, I empathize with the emotionally unavailable parents. I experienced some of that myself, and I know what the impact of that can have. But I suppose what's interesting to me is it sounds like you were pretty high functioning given that childhood. You didn't yourself go into alcoholism or addiction. Am I right?
Yeah, no. So my only addiction was computer games. Like I would, from early teenage years till maybe like late 20s, I would work and then I would just spend some time playing computer games. But I kind of I was functional gaming addict because I wouldn't play online games, which like are all consuming. I would just play like strategy games and in a way, I think it was good coping mechanism because it prevented me from, street drugs or alcohol or trouble. And actually, like the kind of strategy games I was playing, I think like prepared me for running a retreat, because it's very similar. It's like you start and then you build and then you improve. And I guess it's like that's my addiction. I mean, for a while I was kind of I probably for maybe 3 years of my life I was probably a sex addict. You could probably safely say, because like I was really mesmerized by women, still am, but I think for a few years I pursued it a little too much. But yeah, I didn't go into alcoholism like my dad did or my granddad or several generations before. And yeah, I was always very functional. It's kind of this mentality where you like emotions are like whatever you feel is just not important. It's like, oh, like in Eastern Europe, like because like all that area is like world war after world war. It's like you have two legs, you have two arms. Like, what are you complaining about? Like you're alive, right? Are your belly full? Like what depression? Like I remember first time I heard the word depression like 15 years ago. It was in a setting of like, oh, look at those people pretending they have a problem, right? It's like that culture. It's changing now, but it was like emotions is not a priority, and for me that was a difficult thing to embrace, kind of like open that soft side. But yeah, once it's open, the floodgate was open, and for me I needed something as strong as ayahuasca to like break that shell. And now like I am pretty emotional, I'm still pretty functional, but like I cried yesterday. So,
Right.
and I went like not crying at all for like 15 years,
Yeah,
maybe
that
when
was
my grandma
exactly
died.
the same with me. Yeah, I did just over a decade without crying once.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I'm still interested though that you came out. I get the depression. I don't want to, that's obviously that's significant. I'm still curious though that you came through that with you're the third generation. You didn't hit alcoholism. Yes, there's some sex addiction and some gaming addiction, but do you sense there was anything else in your childhood that kept you, relative to your ancestors, let's say, pretty
Yeah,
functional, pretty healthy?
I think the difference was that my childhood was bad, but it was way less bad than my ancestors. So it's like with every generation, it gets a little better. Like if
Okay.
I tell my therapist about my childhood, he's appalled. He's like, "Oh my God, like this is terrible. Like how are you even coping with this?" And then like, but if I tell him about my dad's childhood or my mom's childhood, it's like my child was like, yeah, my dad was an alcoholic. Instead of telling us bad stories, he would tell us about how he was abused when he was a child and things like this. He would beat up my mom, and you know he had money, but he would never give us any, and we kind of had money, but we lived like poor, those kinds of things. But his childhood was like his dad would kill people, and like when he would punish him, he would break beer glasses on his head. Like this was next level crazy. Like he tried to kill him, not to like punish him or like literally kill him. And like but if you look at my grandparents, like they lost their children, there was war, there was famine. My grandmother is on my mother's side, her first memory is going on a train to Siberia, being exported, orphans, hunger, dying of hunger. So it's like, yeah, I mean, that's why we sort of try not to complain about emotions, because it's like, yeah, like what are you complaining about? Like your life is actually pretty good. But I guess if you look at my children now, growing in this green paradise and with the pool and never winter and tasty food and a nanny and tons of attention, it's like, yeah, so it's like every generation gets a little better. But that kind of helped me. And I guess martial arts really helped me. Like when I was a teenager, I first found myself in the boxing gym when I was 7 years old. And I believe now that especially my teens, when stuff was coming up and I was like getting really, really like not in a good shape mentally, like I would go to the boxing gym and I would just beat the shit out of those bags. And I think that was my coping mechanism earlier. After that gym, and also I think my parents kind of kept me forever busy. Like I would go to school and then I would go to music class, or I'd go to school and I would go to boxing class, or in the weekends I would go and do chess. So I kind of had no time to think about my woes.
That's interesting. And that strategy persisted, right? After childhood, you kept yourself busy. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's still my coping mechanism. Like I like, you know, it's hard for me not to do anything because then I start finding problems. You know, it's like because of that unsafe childhood, like my mind was conditioned to scan for threats, and it's
Yes.
greatly diminished. But it's not. So I can't say like, oh, like look at me, I'm fully healed, because it's an interesting paradox. Because I started my healing and I got so much better so quickly. Then I completely focused on running this retreat center and helping other people heal, like thousands of people. I kind of got distracted from my own healing, and only now, like 5 years later, I finally hired a team and I'm focusing back on my healing. So don't expect me to be like fully healed. I'm maybe like in the best case one step ahead, but definitely, yeah, like it's a night and day difference. But you know, it's kind of like with healing. You heal so much, and then you realize there's still so much more, and then you realize there's still so much more. So yeah,
Yeah.
this never-ending journey.
One question that God cares about, Sam, was did you have a witness? That can sometimes make the difference coming through childhood. Was there someone who could see what you were going through with your alcoholic father and what was happening with your mother? Did you have
I
something,
mean,
like that?
my siblings, like my brother and my sister. My sister found her own path. Like we were talking about before the interview, that like there's many ways for healing. Like in my
Mm,
case, it was ayahuasca, then followed by coaching and therapy and other modalities. In her case, it was coaching. She found coaching, and so we kind of keep each other, I guess, accountable, and we look at our progress. And if I were to meet a friend from childhood, which I don't really have that many connections with, I'm a different person, like completely different. So for me, it's obvious. The change is obvious for everyone. But from where I stand now, there's just still so much more to
yeah.
work on, right? That's what I'm trying to convey, which is not like overwhelming and like, oh my God, will this ever be over? I also have this acceptance. Actually, a few ceremonies ago, I had this feeling where it's like it became so obvious to me that like we need all those problems to solve, because like otherwise there would be no content. Like, you know, have you ever went to see a movie where, you know, it's happy end straight away? Like you're not going to watch that movie. You need an adventure, and it's like accepting the fact that it is a journey and it's left and right and ever, like kind of accept that it's difficult, but then that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Get it. Okay, so let's go to Colombia the first time. So you said you're curious, and take me through that first experience with ayahuasca. And actually, for the
Mhm.
people who are listening to this and don't know what ayahuasca is, also explain what it is. That would be good.
Okay. So starting from the basics, ayahuasca is a psychedelic brew or tea, a concoction from northwestern Amazon, specifically Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and Brazil. It's been used traditionally. Some people say 5,000 years. Some people say 8,000 years. There's different stories, but basically it's a mix of two plants: ayahuasca vine, Banisteriopsis capi, and then DMT shrub, which could be chacruna or chagropanga. In Colombia, it's chagropanga. In Peru, it's chacruna. That's the main difference. It is a viscous, dark liquid that you consume in a shot. It's kind of like has like honey texture, not a very pleasant taste, not unpleasant in the first time, but then after the more you drink it, the less pleasant it becomes. When you drink it, you experience deep psychedelic states. So ayahuasca vine contains MAOI or MAO inhibitors, which make DMT orally active. If you would consume DMT, you would not have any effect on you unless you smoke it, but orally, nothing. But the ayahuasca vine makes DMT orally active. So you basically have a DMT-like experience for 4 to 5 hours instead of like if you smoke DMT, it's like 15 minutes. Plus, ayahuasca vine itself has harmful alkaloids, and they also have different effects. So that's just the substance itself. But on top of it, there is a tradition, there is a shaman, there is music, there is a container. Together, that experience results in like mostly stuff coming up. You can process your trauma, you can release things. There's also purgative effect to it, where you purge, you vomit, or you have diarrhea. And what it feels like is you take this somatic energy stored in your body, and it then comes up and it gets somehow becomes physical, and then you purge it physically. And then next day, like your stories, you say it took you 10 years of therapy to heal. Some people tell me, like, oh, it felt like 10 years of therapy, or it felt like 20 years of therapy. Or they say, no, you know, I feel 20 kilos lighter. That's kind of the effect. But ayahuasca is a multi-tool, meaning that you can use it for healing, but you can also use it for growth, and you can also use it for spiritual exploration. So we at LaWayra, we focus on healing because I think that's the most necessary part. Like I try to clean up the experience, remove all of the woo-woo stuff and all the unnecessary things, get to the basics. People come, they heal, and then spirituality kind of starts seeping through cracks. But then eventually, as you keep working with the medicine, it starts to become about why are we here, and God, and people meet different entities, and it becomes this. But mostly personally, and here we focus on healing. And so yeah, it's the brew. You take it in a ceremonial setting, and it's traditionally has been a medicine. We call it a medicine. We, like, when people arrive, we tell them, like, sorry guys, there won't be any drugs, because some people still see it this way. And yeah, so that's what ayahuasca is. My story, people describe calling to ayahuasca, and the way it felt for me was, I've heard about it, I left at it. I'm like, what do you say? I'm going to go to jungle and take drugs and puke? Like, what are you, crazy? I would never do it. Pay for it? Like, what are you, crazy? So, and then over years, you start hearing it on the podcast, on the books. A friend did it. Your grandmother did it. It's like it starts to surround you in this echo chamber, where eventually it's like you just can't deny that you are being called to ayahuasca. And in my case, that happened, but I was in Colombia, and I thought that, well, I need to go to Peru to do ayahuasca, because obviously ayahuasca, you do it in Peru and Costa Rica. What I didn't know is that not only ayahuasca is as traditional in Colombia as in Peru, it might even be more traditional. And ever since then, I kind of found more and more proof to that. But eventually I was at an ice bath event, and there was people talking about ayahuasca, and apparently they were doing ayahuasca in Colombia. So I jumped on the opportunity, and so there was curiosity and that calling. It wasn't like, oh, let me go heal through ayahuasca. Back then I didn't really necessarily even accept that I had any problems. I was like, no, I'm totally fine. Look at me. I have two parents, I have two hands and two legs. My life is great. And like, but ayahuasca, it didn't kind of like show me all at once overwhelmingly. I just saw pretty visions, and I felt nice, but it changed something in me on like a subconscious level, where I just started to believe in myself. And I only understand it now, years later. That's another thing about ayahuasca that's complicated. It's the time is not linear. Then now I go back to that memory, and I realized that shortly after that, I wrote a list of goals of things that I want to achieve. And now 5 years later, I achieved all of them. And something changed in me when I went from if to when. Like, I just started believing that I'm going to do this, and it's just going to work out. And it's hard to explain and hard to measure, but that was my journey. And eventually I started drinking ayahuasca once every 3 months, 6 months, till COVID started, and I moved to the countryside. And that's when like everything caught up with me, I guess, together with the openness. Ayahuasca just shifted something, stuff just started to come up. And I ended like really, really in a bad place mentally, no purpose, didn't know what to do with my life. And that's when I really went to ayahuasca for healing. Like I went head in, and in one of the ceremonies, it kind of there was a vision where it just kind of showed me like, yeah, this is your purpose. Like, working with ayahuasca, healing other people is your purpose. It was really hard for me to accept. As I'm telling you, I was never spiritual. I was never religious. I grew up in like super secular setting, engineer. So for me, it's like, what do you mean? Like, I just, I came to ayahuasca just to like reset my brain and heal me. And now like and then synchronicity started happening, and I ended up with the retreat. So I never started my retreat. It started itself. And I know it sounds weird, but that's kind of how it is in this space. Like once you jump into it, things just start happening, right people come on time, and you kind of follow this path of breadcrumbs. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So you started to take ayahuasca. You say you see these pretty visions. Something shifts, and then you get depressed. Like normally, it's people like they get depressed and then they find ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like for you had some baseline experience with it, and then something hit. Do you think that was a result of the ayahuasca? Kind of opened you up to allow you for that stuff to surface? Like, how do you rationalize that?
So the reality is, I don't know still. I don't entirely know because most of it is unconscious, right? And ayahuasca is shadow medicine, meaning it works when you're unconscious. So a lot of times you see one vision, but it does something completely different to you. Like we have people come, drink the medicine, not feel anything, not see anything, and then they go back home, their depression gone, their addiction's gone. So here's what I think happened. I was very busy. I was traveling. I was having a lot of fun. Before that, I was busy working. I was just always 100% constantly busy. But when COVID started, and I've already had a few ayahuasca experiences, I think ayahuasca shifted something where I started asking questions. And then on top of that, I was, for the first time ever, doing nothing at all. And there was nothing I could do. And I was just sitting there with myself. And I think together that created this perfect storm where stuff started to come up. So it kind of points to the fact that we see depression or we see those mental health symptoms as something bad, something we need to remove. But the reality is, I think a lot of it is just part of the process. Like you need to go through pain to remove it. And it's like, so I went from being so stuck and everything was so repressed that I didn't even feel it. But so I did not think I was depressed, but like my wife knew something was wrong with me. She's like, "Oh, how are you?" I'm like, "I'm okay." But she knew like something was wrong with me. I didn't know it. This is the weird part. But then after this events, now I knew it. And now I'm at the point in my life where I just know all of my problems and they're so obviously painfully available that I can't even ignore them anymore. Some of them I've fixed completely, some I'm still working on, but it's like that's the progress. It's not like, oh, you drink ayahuasca and everything is gone. No, it's like this slow grinding, pulling stuff out of yourself. And then you need to integrate, you need to journal, you need to do coaching, you need to do therapy. Ayahuasca is not going to heal you. For the first month after you drink it, you will feel like you're completely healed. And then your patterns will start remerging. And so this is the process. I hope I'm not discouraging people from even trying, because it is a gruesome process. But then as a result of it, eventually you get to the point where that darkness, that heaviness is now gone and you can actually be happy. But what I realized is like, okay, now, so I went from not feeling anything at all to now feeling a lot. Like I feel so much emotion. It is overwhelming. Like I understand why my childhood brain decided to just shut down. If it didn't, I would go crazy probably. But it also means I feel the negative emotions. It also means like and I understand your ability to feel pain equals your ability to feel love and joy. You cannot just choose one. So that's my story.
No, thank you. Thanks for sharing. And thank you for your point about depression. Yeah, I have a similar view that I thankfully I've never, as I was telling you before we came to the show, I've had an addiction story, but not a depression one. But nonetheless, I think I see people pathologize depression. And the way I see it, no, this is your body there's no mistakes in nature. The body's causing you to slow down, to stop, to introspect. There's a reason it has you in this place. There's something to learn here. There's something to grow from. It's not a bad thing.
I have an analogy that's coming up to me. It's like you're sitting in your living room and your house catches fire and you feel really uncomfortable. Like you feel really hot and you just feel like something is wrong and you just don't like it and you're anxious, right? But it's like, is it all just, should you just take a pill and continue like burning in the fire, or is there something that needs to be done? And like the conventional medical system is like, oh, like just be happy, you know, like repress this. But no, people are depressed because life is not really great and they need to change something. And it's like, it's not only just healing the childhood trauma, but it's also healing your current situation. Sometimes it's like if you're in a really unhappy place, like when, for example, if you drink ayahuasca, it will just reveal to you immediately, like, oh, this doesn't work for you, this works for you, and you just can't ignore it anymore. But if you take antidepressant and you just stay there, deal with the side effects, now it's like it's not gonna. Yeah, so there is merit to, like, people kind of try to pretend, or they think that our bodies or our minds or our brains are stupid and just misfunctioning. No, they're uniquely, perfectly designed to make us survive. So every coping mechanism, every adaptation is for the better. So we need to pay attention to it. And like it worked for me to be repressed and to be numb for all those years because I didn't have space to heal. And even like in the last few years when I was overworking myself and burning myself out, creating this healing container, I needed to sort of be in a certain state. Now I find myself at the point where I can start letting go, and I find myself also like falling apart a little bit sometimes, and it's a part of it, and I need to kind of accept it, not be like, oh, like, no, you have to be strong all the time, you have to be, you know, present that front to people. That's another thing I'm really passionate to talk about, is like we live in a society where I call it Instagram society. Everyone shows to the world their glossy, perfect side. Look at me, I'm perfect. And because everyone sees the perfect version of everyone else, they think they're the only ones flawed, and they keep repressing their own stuff. But when people come here, for example, one of the things we explain to them is like, no, here we do the opposite. It's totally fine to start your day by talking about how you were abused when you were a child and showing your rough side, showing your imperfect side. And when we all start showing our imperfect sides to the world, that imperfection allows cohesion. Like that's, you know, from an engineering point of view, it's like friction is, you know, there's micro imperfections, and that's what makes things creates friction, right? And that friction creates that ability for people to actually bond on a deeper level. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but hopefully
It's a beautiful metaphor. I'd never considered that before. But yeah, that allowing of the rough edges allows to be exposed, allows us to cohere. So there's something to latch onto. There's something I can bond with now that I see your pain too. Oh, I love that.
And as I speak about it, I kind of, it's almost like as I speak about it, I understand it a little bit more myself. So like I'm really not that enlightened just yet, but I think I'm on the right path.
Yeah, it reminds me of a client we have. So our my day job is as a leadership coach and leadership development facilitator, and we had a client once who had some exposure to our work. Some of them had exposure to our work in other settings, and we were putting together a proposal, and they said, yeah, we don't want all the visioning stuff. We don't want all the leadership stuff. We just want to do that stuff that you do when like people just tell their stories. Like just give us that stuff. And that's all we did. We just created a container. Well, it's not all we did. The basis of what we did was create a container where people share their raw stories with each other. And this was a management team. And it was, that's what we needed. And it allowed us to come together as a management team. It allowed us to cohere. It developed the trust between us. And from there, we ourselves can do the visioning and the strategy and whatever else. So yeah, there's a lot in what you're saying.
I have an idea, something that I've been thinking about for a long time, but I could never make it happen. So we do general retreats for all kinds of people. They come together, they drink the medicine, they heal. But I also, like, we did a retreat for MMA fighters and did some studies on their brains, and we sometimes do specific kinds of events. And I really would like to one day do an event where like board of directors or like this big C-suite or management team from one company comes, with facilitated by someone like you, and we can talk about it. You bring a group here, you do your stuff, but then in between, every night they drink ayahuasca, and just to see the catalytic effect, like how much it's going to increase or speed up that process and what it's going to do to people, because I think it could be really powerful. I just don't know how to get those people, but we could probably even study it, make a study about it, because I'm also passionate about science recently. Yeah, I don't know if you ever want to try something like that.
No, that sounds fascinating, and it's interesting. You ought to have first of all, I'd love to do that, and if I could find a client who, frankly, had the balls to say to their business, "I'm going to take us all off to Colombia and do an ayahuasca retreat," yeah, that would be awesome. What also brings me to mind is the work that Neil Markey is doing from Beckley Retreats. They use mushrooms; they're not using ayahuasca. But from my understanding is they've already had some success bringing management teams out to these retreats, and they'll do mushrooms together. So I think and that's why I'm so, this podcast is all about like, what's the cutting edge, or maybe what's the bleeding edge of like where we're going with the management and leadership conversation and corporate culture and so on. And so I think it's great. I'd love to be involved with that.
You should connect me with what do you say, Neil
Markey. Yeah, it's called Beckley Retreats.
I'm gonna reach out to him and interview him as well, because it's very interesting.
Yeah, he's a great interviewee, and also his story is really about how it's shifted his whole worldview. He came from he was at McKinsey management consultants, and then he was in finance, I think private equity, and he's similar story to you, right? I think he either depressed or burnt out, and then he went and did a mushroom retreat, psychedelics retreat, completely transformed his life, and gave him a different give, not just his sort of personal health and contentment, but also his worldview about how do we create a society where people are contributing, where we're not seeking to profit from exploitation of resources. Like, he's completely changed his outlook from that perspective, which I thought was fascinating.
I'm a big believer not just in ayahuasca, but in psychedelics in general. I think as long as it's done carefully in the right setting, where everything is accounted for, I think it can be very profound. Like, I love mushrooms. I engage with mushrooms regularly as well. So yeah, it's good. Like, people. And, on my own podcast, I interview a lot of people, and I always ask them, like, what brought you to that line of work? And it's generally people did something and it was okay, but then they had the psychedelic experience, or sometimes people just get spontaneous experience where they just all of a sudden realize that the way they live their life is not good. And then it's that message, like, how can we live differently? Because the reason so many people are depressed now is not because they lack serotonin in their brain, is because the way we live life is just not good for us as species. Like, ayahuasca aside, people come here to my retreat and they sit in the circles and they talk about their problems, and then they sit around the fire and they're in the nature. Even if I gave them placebo, just some vomitive, so they just purge, I think they would get a lot from it, because we miss that. We are tribal creatures. We're not designed to live in place with 2 million people and worry about 8 billion people's problems, but not get any friends or any love. We're super lonely and we need community. And like, when you engage with psychedelics, it just immediately reveals that to you. We're all connected. Love is all there is. And it's like, but then you go back to the real world, normal, quote unquote. Yeah. So what do you do about this?
It's a great question. It's a great question, and you're absolutely right about community. What immediately came to mind as you're talking about it, you've seen the stats on the Amish in the States, right? Like, highest happiness, highest well-being, highest health. You name it, right?
No autism.
What? Sorry.
No autism as well.
Yeah, no autism, right? Like, they're clean with their medicines, right? So you've got this, for me, as a model, right? That shows us, we've got the data staring us in the face there about, the power of community, connection with nature, simple whole foods, right? So it's all there for us. And what do those of us? I'm not going to go join an Amish community anytime soon. Yeah, for those of us living modern lifestyles, what's
Looking at you,
available to us.
looking at your face, I think you'd look really great with just beard and no mustache. So you should consider it.
maybe I'll end up there. But for me, it's about learning from those communities, and how do we recreate that in our modern lives, if it's possible, right? I mean, yeah, I guess that's an open question.
Yeah, because personally, I also love progress. I love internet. I love the fact that we can talk this way. I love that I have a car and I can go to the city and go to the restaurant. So I'm not trying to say like, oh, let's just all tune out or whatever they used to say, like, and go to the forest and hide. I don't want to cook my own food always and like hunt. I mean, maybe occasionally, but there are, we have all those great things that come from our society. It's just like, it's not about like destroying all of us, but how can we fine tune it a little bit? Like, it's interesting. I think about it a lot because growing up in like being born in Soviet Union, having my first years there, it was obviously like a really advanced country. And then like they had to destroy all to rebuild and now kind of become different. Why I always ask myself, why couldn't they just like change it a little bit so you don't start from scratch? Like, how can we now change the way we make money and the way we live to just like slightly adjust? And I'm thinking a lot about AI as well, and like what that brings. And there's obviously all kinds of good scenarios and bad scenarios, but I'm kind of thinking, what if what if the best of the best happens and robots do all of the boring work and AI does all the boring computer work, and then people just all get standard basic income. Nobody knows what to do, and I think this is where we can just go and be all hippies. And because what are you going to do with all this spare time? Well, there's one thing that has no limit, which is spiritual exploration. You can go and drink ayahuasca and meditate and sit by the fire and just enjoy. And there is like a limitless amount of content. Like no matter how many times I drink ayahuasca, it's always something new comes, and you're like, oh my God, this is better than Netflix.
Right. Is that going to suit? I don't know. Is that going to suit everybody? Living a purely spiritual life?
Well, that's a good question, right? Because I'm not your typical suspect. Like, I was completely different. Like, I would never in my life imagine I would do this. So that's why I think that you'd be surprised how many people would enjoy that kind of lifestyle if they kind of awaken that part in them. Because in the end of the day, we are spiritual creatures. Like, being born is a spiritual process, dying is a spiritual process, and it's just in between we decide to ignore it, and maybe that's part of the problem.
Yeah, these are fascinating questions. I mean, there's I guess there's also one can lead a spiritual life whilst being active in building. And do we need, is it, well, back to friction, is there a level in which we need a certain amount of friction in our lives to grow and develop spiritually? And if that friction were removed and we had all we could eat and all the shelter and everything just available for us to free, would that be conducive to spiritual development? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, those are the questions I ask myself every day, because obviously I drink ayahuasca and I live in the nature, but I'm still like extremely busy. Like, our team is 37 people and there's a lot of things in my head and I get overwhelmed and a little burnt out from time to time. Ayahuasca definitely helps. Coaching helps, therapy helps, all the modalities help. But also it's like just the system itself, like capitalism, I guess it's kind of, when you work with people and it's all about love and giving, but then also you need to receive, and in business side you need to think about marketing and ads, and it's a little manipulative in its nature, and it's a little like there's a bit of greed in it, and like finding that balance is very difficult. I just hope that we can all ask those questions, and like I would love to do a retreat of that sort to kind of see different people in different industries and kind of find what is that perfect balance. Like, what is that perfect routine or like series of interventions where you can still be a cisute corporate person, make things happen, but then also be happy and be a good parent. Like, is it like one ayahuasca retreat a year, and then you meditate every day, and then you do therapy once a week, and maybe you do one mushroom ceremony every quarter? Like, what is it for different people? What is that perfect routine, right? Because you cannot go to any extreme, because for me personally, it's very obvious, right? I can go full business and I can just focus on prices and making money, and then people be like, well, this guy is not really walking walking his talk. But then if I go full spiritual and I stop answering to my emails, everything falls apart. That's also not good. So it's about that balance, and I'm trying my best, trying to constantly find it.
Yeah, exactly. Balance. Yeah, we had a samurai, 16th generation samurai warrior on the show.
Wow.
And he really emphasized this point of balance being all balance, finding the midpoint in everything, in relationships, in ourselves, in all. So you mentioned something there was interesting when you were sort of speculating on what an ideal routine might be, and you mentioned ayahuasca once a year, mushroom once a quarter. Why I'm curious about this is because I got to this place where I've done an awful lot of healing. Of course, I'm still a work in progress. I feel spiritually open, and medicine hasn't been part of my journey, right? But I've experienced a lot of the same things. I mean, I've not had vomiting, but I've certainly had prolonged periods of diarrhea after really heavy therapy sessions when I've let a lot go. But I had it just a few weeks ago. I was doing some energy healing and had I had diarrhea the rest of the day. So I feel like I've got to similar places, and I've wailed at the stars. I've been in tears. I've re-experienced some horrific things from my own early life, and I come out the other side, and I'm in a place where I'm more emotionally stable, and I've got this spiritual interest, and I meditate, and I find myself in psychedelic states sometimes when I'm meditating. So, it's not like I've never experienced any of that. I have, but like it's not really been a feature in my journey. I've never taken ayahuasca. I've taken like mushrooms once, and and to be honest, the experience I had wasn't that different to what I have when I'm meditating. So I guess I'm curious as to your take on the extent to which people need to use medicine as part of their journey.
Yeah. So first of all, salute you on getting so far without ayahuasca. Like, I think that's super cool and super impressive, because I would think that I probably would still be in exactly same place that I was. I think everyone should try it at least once just to see what it is, because even if you're completely healed, ayahuasca is still great, because you can, connect to God or see, the nature of reality and get inspired about different ideas, enhance your creativity. It's not just about healing. Healing is just what I focus on. But for me, I had this pain inside me, and I had a really, really hard shell around it where not even I could accept it and feel it. So I definitely needed ayahuasca to break that shell. And I think for a lot of people in our society, that is necessary, because not only it's faster, but also it's just like what you did is you took a pickaxe and shovel and you started digging a tunnel.
Yeah.
To your healing. What I did was dynamite.
Right.
But the problem and analogy I like to use is if you just keep exploding dynamite over and over again, your shaft will collapse and you're not going to get far. So just ayahuasca by itself is not going to be enough. Just the meditation or other sort of softer modalities, I think they're great, but they are slow. But they are great because you know where you're getting, and it's going to take time. But if you don't quit, which is the most important part, because most people will quit. Like they were going to do therapy for 1 year, it doesn't work, it costs so much money, they will quit. So
I was in a very fortunate position. I could do therapy at least once a week for a decade, basically, sometimes twice, sometimes 5 times a week, right? Like I was
Yeah,
very
so that's the differentiating factor. So what I would believe is the most efficient way, thinking as an engineer, you dig a little bit with a pickaxe, do some therapy, like I have this problem. Take some dynamite, ayahuasca, boom, explodes. Then once again, take a pickaxe, take shovel, integrate, clean out the rubble, and you get good with where you are. Once again, identify the problem. I'm going this way, boom, dynamite. So I think, I don't have a perfect formula, but I think it could speed things up by maybe tenfold. But at the same time, still you need to integrate, whether it is journaling or talking to your chat GPT, which actually is surprisingly helpful, or talking to a therapist or a coach, or like I recently started experimenting with brain training, yoga, meditation, you name it. You need to create your own perfect holistic modality, because what works for one person is not going to work for the other. And there is also, like, ayahuasca is not for everyone. Someone might have like psychotic tendencies. In this case, no, you have to like take it slow. You just have no choice. But from my point of view, what I've learned, what I understood, obviously I'm in a very privileged position where I have ayahuasca on tap, so to speak. Like we have 12 ceremonies every month in 4 retreats. There's not a ceremony every night, but like I can just, any night I'm off to the ceremony, I get my pick me up and connect to God and to mystery again, and everything is great. People don't have it. So let's say personally, if I was living in the US, if I was busy entrepreneur, but I wanted to stay sane in this world, because I also have 3 young kids, right? 1, 3, and 5. So it's like extra difficult.
Yeah.
But if I was not having ayahuasca on tap, here's what I would personally do. I would do one ayahuasca, one week ayahuasca retreat every year. Just go deep, reset once a year, reconnect, purge, remove, because that's what ayahuasca is good at, just like scrub everything out. Then I would probably do one therapy or coaching session every week at least. I would journal when I feel something. I would probably take one mushroom dose every 6 months in my backyard or in a park somewhere beautiful with a friend or something like that. And then I would probably work out or do yoga, and I would meditate half an hour in the morning or in the evening. I would say that somewhere there, that could probably be good modality for most people. You can shift around different psychedelics or different, maybe for someone, instead of ayahuasca retreat, maybe they're going to do a silent retreat, but some kind of retreat where you like take yourself away. And I would probably add into this like a couple of vacations to just disconnect. That would be, like, from the top of my head, that would be my perfect routine for someone to stay connected and still productive. What do you think? Like, what do you do apart from therapy?
I do therapy, energy work. I do less emotional therapy now. I think this is part of my journey, is that I sort of open myself up spiritually, in part through the therapy work. I think it stabilized me and grounded my physiology in such a way that I was able to, and I got a lot of hemispheric integration, so I was far less left brain dominant, and I think that also helped with the spiritual development. So I think in some ways I saw the deep emotional work and the trauma release as a foundational for more of the spiritual opening. And now that's opened me up both to spiritual experience, but also to these subtler forms of healing and development, the energy healing I was mentioning. And so I find that very powerful. But yeah, so I meditate, I do yoga, I do some of the, but I have to be honest with you, I don't feel a need for the psychedelics or and that's, I guess I have done so much, I've never done ayahuasca, so I don't know, but I don't feel a strong pull for it. And I wonder if I've kind of done enough work where I can get there without that now, or am I naive at some level, and actually there's another stage I could be reaching were I to engage in ayahuasca that I would then discover. I guess that's where I'm
I cannot tell you exactly because I don't know, but I can guess. I can make an educated guess based on my observations of thousands of people drinking ayahuasca, and specifically my sister. Like, she took a path of coaching, and she paid many tens of thousands of dollars for very great coaches, and she got very far. And she was like, "Yeah, I don't care about your whole ayahuasca stuff." And then she really wanted me to join her to go for a Joe Dispenza retreat. And I said, "Well, I'll go, but then you have to come to my retreat." And she did. And she had a massive breakthrough, meaning like whatever, everything she learned and everything she done, it was great. But then times three, she went to the next level, and you talk about energy work, right? She picked up some shamanism, started drumming, and like, because she lives in Ireland, there's like drumming circles. Now she's like, we had a call recently, and she did this card reading for me, and the energies were moving and the screens were flickering. It's like, there are levels to it, meaning that here's my invitation to you. Come to LaWayra, totally free of charge, and drink ayahuasca. And then we're going to do a podcast, but I'm going to interview you, and we can talk about what you're going to find on the other side. Because I can assure you one thing, it's definitely not going to make it worse. But based on my observations, I think that there's a lot more. And once again, bringing back to like the motto of LaWayra is connect, heal, grow. And you've done without ayahuasca connecting and healing part, and you're now in a growth part. But the growth, there is no cap. It's infinity. Like, so to say like there's nothing left for me to explore is just not reasonable. Like, it is infinity.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I'm not saying
you
there's
don't
nothing
have
left.
to, but if you ever want to, I think it would be very curious case study.
Yeah. No, and I get it's not like there's nothing more for me to. I'm sure there is far more for me to explore spiritually. I'm just curious about whether or not I would need the medicine to help me, or is it, I naturally I find myself getting deeper in meditations more easily. I drop into meditative states, spiritual states more easily in meditation. Sometimes psychedelic states, like I say, especially funny enough when I do the Dispenza meditations, and if I get up at 3 and do those, I get to some really interesting places. So yeah, I would be curious to know whether some chemical assistance might make a difference. Yeah, it'd be interesting. But that sounds like that was the case with your sister. She was getting to certain places with meditation, and she got even further with the ayahuasca.
So with Dispenza, she loved it, and she did it so many times. And then she did a retreat first here, and then a few months later, she went to Dispenza. We went together. And she's like, it was next level. Like she was, everything was just much more powerful. She was connecting more. She was getting more visions. It is an enhancer. It is a catalyst to whatever it is you're doing. So there's only one way to find out, and you have my invitation now. It's safe, and it is, parts of it are difficult, but it's actually very pleasant a lot of times. So,
Well, that part doesn't worry me at all, right? Because I went to some very dark places just with not just with traditional therapy. Yeah, I've been frothing at the mouth and writhing on the floor, and all of it. So not the puking, but definitely the diarrhea. So yeah, that holds no. Yeah, I'm not perturbed by that at all. Yeah, and thank you for the offer. I've also got 2 kids. I'm not sure I'm going to swing a trip to South America anytime soon, but I really appreciate the offer. Maybe we could combine it in some kind of holiday thing.
You can bring your kids, yes.
Well, thank you. The question I had, you mentioned safety. So this is something that comes up a lot when we talk about ayahuasca. And I had a one-on-one conversation with somebody who'd been to South America and been on ayahuasca and had been molested by the shaman. Right? This is a first-hand testimony of this happening. So people may have seen the newspaper reports. I've also had first-hand testimony. So I guess my question is, to what extent is that prevalent, and how can people avoid it?
Yes, unfortunately, it is true, and there's a lot of that in the space. I think a lot of it comes from the fact that shamans are just people, right? They're very connected and they're very talented in shamanism realm, but they're just people, and they're also people from a very archaic culture. We as Westerners, we tend to idealize them and be like, oh, they're just there, just hugging trees, and they're so perfect. But if you really look at indigenous people, they're not saints. Like they have problems and they do bad things, and they actually kill each other and they mistreat women, and they have a very different culture. So like, think about how a person from 2000 years ago would treat a pretty woman. Like there was, a lot of rape and stuff like that. So when when you go to deep jungle and you're in the middle of nowhere, there, even countries' laws don't apply there. Like a lot of places in the jungle, like if they want to kill you, they kill you, throw you in the river, and there's not much you can do. I'm not saying that they're that bad. Like I have an indigenous shaman and I love him and he's a great guy, but you just have to be very careful and kind of understand that they have different standards, and if they, ayahuasca is an aphrodisiac as well. So I think it's, the here's what I think happens. There's an indigenous shaman, and there's this beautiful white girl comes, exotic, and you know he just gets carried away, and might think she's even attracted to him or something like that. So it's really important to basically make sure the people you work with, they're just in integrity and they can control themselves. And I can't really talk much about other places. I can't control them, can't set the culture. Here at LaWayra, like, we have an impeccable reputation. My shaman himself has a family and has 3 kids. He's completely in integrity. He's as careful about it as myself. He knows many shamans that went to this issues, some of them from his tribe. We talk about this openly. So it's important that the place you go to has a good reputation and you know who they are and what they do. Like what we personally do, I'm very careful with facilitators, even volunteers that I hire, to make sure that there is no boundaries. There are rules set, like, because sometimes it goes both ways. Because I'm married, I have 3 kids, and I have sometimes women that come to the retreat and literally they throw themselves at me, and it's because they drink the medicine, they see me, I'm in position of power, they feel attracted, or maybe they're projecting something. So you have to be also strong enough to say no sometimes, and it is not easy, like, to walk that path with integrity. But um, yeah, so it's really important to just find places, look at their reputation, and specifically look at their reputation at places they can't control. Not their testimonials on their website, but Google, Reddit, everywhere where people can leave an honest review. And then this way you'll know what they're all about, right? And then if you're a woman and you're going to deep jungle, bring a guy friend with you. Like, don't go alone, because um, yeah, it's good to have some protection. So if you really want to be adventurous and go deep and maybe explore, it's not like a 100% chance something's going to happen. It's still a small chance, but don't take the risk. Just bring someone with you. And yeah, so that's what I have to say about this. Nothing else comes to mind.
So that's one aspect of the safety aspect. The other aspect is, well, you mentioned earlier, people with psychotic tendencies, it's best not to do it. I mean, I have seen reports out there of people, family members, having talked about this one specific report I remember reading. The son had gone and done it, and then several months later had committed suicide, and the family were blaming it on the ayahuasca. What do you say to stories like that?
Yeah, so of course, so ayahuasca is a very powerful tool, right? It's not a toy. Once again, like, I equated it to dynamite. And so there's few things. So first of all, it's like the centers have to be careful with medical screening. They have to ask the right questions, and people need to give an honest answer, because we had people saying they have no psychosis, never had it, and then come to the retreat and then through the cracks slip that they have had psychosis. So there's only that much you can do as a retreat, because I don't know if you ever watched Dr. House show, but he says like people lie, they always lie, and it came up a couple times. Yeah, making sure that there's right screening, because in some cases you just shouldn't take ayahuasca. It's not your path. When it comes to the medicine as well, so we've given ayahuasca now close to 3,000 people. So, and nobody is ever worse than before. So as far as I know, nobody killed himself and nobody had psychosis. And most importantly, we had more than 10 people telling us afterwards, because once again, we asked on the questionnaire, are you suicidal? Telling us that they were suicidal and they actually bought a one-way ticket here. And they actually told themselves if it doesn't work, they will kill themselves. So that's another part of the story. And they all left home and they're still alive. So there's also the other side of it. But
well, that's interesting. So how do you handle that? So you've got somebody coming to your retreat, you know they're suicidal, they know that this can bring up stuff for them. What's your process for managing through the journey?
So if you know they're suicidal, it depends. If they say like, oh, I'm immediately suicidal, do you say yes or do you say no? Because if you say no, don't come, they'll probably kill themselves, right? That's a big responsibility. If you say yes, it will probably help them. But then if they do kill themselves and they kill themselves at your retreat is over and everything you worked for 5 years is thrown out, because people are not going to question whether they were priorly suicidal. But at least you have that track record. So that's a decision I'll have to make on case-by-case basis. A lot of times people say like, yeah, I was suicidal like a few years ago, and it's like, it's pretty safe. But what we can do is if somebody comes like, oh, if you're suicidal, well, don't get a private cabin. Stay in a shared room so there's people around you. Tell the team to observe them more carefully. See what they say in word circles, because people will show signs if they're about to kill themselves. Like they will be kind of saying goodbye. For me, the most important part is seeing whether they have future plans. If a person says like, oh, after this, I'm going to go that and do this, then it's like, you're okay. But we are walking a thin line. So it's like, what do I do? If someone says they're suicidal, do I tell them no and kind of take that responsibility that because I know this can help them, or then take responsibility? So it's a kind of like, that image with the train and two tracks, and no matter which way you go, there's a risk. But going back to the topic of safety is the conclusion I came to in the space of ayahuasca is that most retreat centers knowingly or unknowingly overdose people. Like ayahuasca is extremely powerful, and there's a lot of ego involved with because ayahuasca is not like other psychedelics. When you take mushrooms, if you take 2 grams of mushrooms, you know exactly what's going to happen on 2 grams of mushrooms every single time. When you take ayahuasca, someday you take 2 cups and feel nothing. The other day you take 1 cup and you get blown to the universe. And the problem is a lot of foreigners, when they come to jungle and they drink ayahuasca, they want this strong experience because they obviously watched all those videos. But ayahuasca, a lot of times, first few ceremonies, it's very mild. Like it scans you, you purge a little bit, and then people get frustrated. They want to leave. They want to leave a bad review. So it forces shamans and facilitators to increase the dose and increase it more. And then they increase it so much that when they do connect, they get, they get overshot, and it creates problems. So what we do is we start very slow. Like I like to say, we don't even work with psychedelic doses in the beginning. We work with psycholytic doses, like something between the microdose and the normal dose. And we try to get people to the point where they connect, but they don't overly connect. Because if we were to give everyone enough medicine that the entire group connects from the first cup on the first ceremony, I'd have to send 2-3 people to the hospital. So it's a very careful process. And I'm not sure other places do it. And I'm pretty sure a lot of indigenous shamans, they're like, my medicine is the strongest. And all they care about is blowing people's mind and having them tell them that how great their medicine is. And so once again, that comes back to the integrity. In our case, we are a retreat center with Google reviews, and you can go and check them and read them. And if someone has a negative experience, they're going to leave us a 1-star review. And so from integrity, but also from protecting our reputation, we're very careful. And we just inform people. Before they even come, there's a 3-hour course, and we at least half an hour, we just talk about that fact. Connecting, not connecting, what you feel, what you don't feel, if you get overwhelmed, how to navigate that experience. So by the time people drink the medicine, they're already very educated. When they come, there's more workshops. So we prepare people to not have a mind-blowing experience immediately. And by the time they do, they're ready and they know what to do. So yeah, like I almost wish I had like not an ayahuasca retreat, but some other retreat, because it sometimes feels overwhelmingly difficult to be responsible for all the bad players in a space, which unfortunately are a lot. And not even talking about fake shamans, people that have no idea what they're doing, because on top of the physical and mental, there's also spiritual consequences. And if you don't have a real shaman, honestly, with any psychedelic, you need some kind of space holding and protection. And I know it's a little bit more on the woo-woo side, but I've seen enough now to put a lot of importance to it. So yeah, it is a very powerful medicine. It's going to speed up your healing by a lot, but it is very important that you do it very carefully in the right place, because if you do it wrong, so it's like, I like to say ayahuasca is a tool, like scalpel is a tool, and the right person with a scalpel can remove your tumor and save your life. But the person that doesn't know what they're doing can slit your arteries and kill you. Is it
Right.
the tool to blame, or is it the person that holds it and the intention and everything in between?
Got it. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. And where do you think this is going, Sam? Like, you must have your feelers out in terms of general acceptance across different countries, society at large. What do you see as the future of ayahuasca based healing?
So in our eating area, we have a map of the world where people put their pins, where they come from. And around it, there's photos of all the groups we had with like lots of people with happy faces. And we kind of see it's mostly North America, Western Europe, Australia, and then a little bit from everywhere else. So the biggest interest, I would say, is US, Canada, France, Germany, Netherlands, UK. And there's a lot of countries where it's kind of like waking up. Like recently we had we call them Finnish delegation, like 6 people from Finland came. I was actually at the podcast. It's called Psychedelic Therapy Frontiers. They listened to the podcast and they came. And so it's like we're like 6 people from such a small country. It's like a big thing. So it's the interest is growing. It's gradual. It's like with any new thing, even though ayahuasca is an ancient thing, but it's new in our culture. It's like there's a adoption curve. There's waves. It's like more interest, less interest, more interest, less interest. It's kind of almost like, and it's very painful as a business owner, because sometimes too many people want to come, you have no space, and then you expand your space, and then the interest dies down, and you're like half empty or half full, depending on if you're optimist or pessimist. But it seems to be growing. More and more people understand that ayahuasca can be done reasonably, affordably, in a healing way, safely. And then they come, and then they tell their friends, and their friends tell their friends, and the adoption is growing, because there is a mental health crisis in the Western world, and nothing seems to be helping. Of course, we have so many tools these days. We have so many problems these days, but we also have so many tools. But psychedelics seems to be this modality that just works. So as long as it works, people are going to keep coming, and it's going to keep growing. I personally hope more people would be open to it, knowing what I know and seeing what I've seen. And because I have like 10 people every month coming looking me in the eyes and telling me, thank you for saving my life, for changing my life, which is actually something I'm not that comfortable with. And it's something I need to work on. But like, I know it's an extremely powerful tool. It can be done well. It can be done safely. But we have so many misconceptions, both about ayahuasca. Then there's bad players. Then there's bad reputation. Then there is also people just being afraid to go to Colombia because they think Pablo Escobar is still here and is going to kill them, even though that has changed a long time ago. And now, especially Americans, they think like, oh, they went to Venezuela, so it means it's not safe to go to Colombia, because for a lot of them, everything that's south is just Mexico. It's this one country where it's just not safe, and it's not true. But so I'm kind of battling against all those misconceptions and trying to educate people. And so, yeah, I'm hoping in 10 years, we're going to go from what is ayahuasca to when's the last time you did ayahuasca. And I'm personally completely convinced that if we as a culture, like I have this dream where we have New Year's, right? And every day, every person around the world celebrates New Year's and drinks alcohol, right? At least biggest majorities. Like, why can't we have one day where everyone drinks ayahuasca instead, or takes mushrooms or LSD or anything in like safe container? What would the world be the next day? Like, what if we wake up and yesterday everyone had ayahuasca? Would you like cut somebody off on the highway? Would you like, I don't know, shoot someone in the face or stab someone? Like, I don't think so. Like, I really think that this is a strong tool and it's a strong intervention. And if done right and at the scale, I think it can be powerful enough to change society, because the reality is we don't really have that much time left. If we don't do something quick, we're just going to destroy ourselves. Like, look at what's happening right now. It's like we're on the verge of World War III, and there's crisis there and crisis here. Like, if I could give ayahuasca to Trump, would he invade Iran? Like, honestly, I don't think so. I think that there's this one person I'm trying to interview who put 10 Israelis and 10 Palestinians in an ayahuasca ceremony, and 1 week later they were all best friends. I think we can work through our shit if we have good tools, because we need strong tools because of how big our problem is as society. So, but once again, like, you tell me a problem and I can tell you how to fix it with ayahuasca. Because I'm quite a zealot, but I do think it can be part of the solution.
Yeah. Great answer. One other question I had, which was we've sort of touched on, but do you have a sense of when it's better for people to go down the mushroom route versus the ayahuasca route? Like, what's your sense of how to make that choice?
So my personal journey was I went straight to ayahuasca, and it worked for me. A lot of people, they start with mushrooms and then they want to go deeper and then they find ayahuasca. Honestly, you can go both ways. The difference between ayahuasca and mushrooms is ayahuasca has reverse tolerance, which means that every ceremony you drink it, you connect a little more. And mushrooms develop tolerance, meaning if you take 5 grams today, tomorrow you need 10 grams to feel the same effect. So in a retreat setting, I guess mushrooms are less easy to use. And then, so I would say people could probably experiment with mushrooms in lower doses, maybe even start with microdosing to get their feet wet, and maybe have a mushroom ceremony in a safe setting, in a nature, not like hero's dose, and then when they're ready to go deeper, engage with ayahuasca. But at the same time, if someone never done anything and they come here, like we specifically prepare first timers to have a first time experience. Like 80% of our groups are all first timers. So yeah, wow. I think there's both ways work well. For me personally, I see mushrooms as a great refresher, like a booster. and I see ayahuasca as like kind of heavy duty work, and both are uniquely necessary. So I would say like do one deep ayahuasca retreat once a year, and then do a couple mushroom experiences to reconnect. Because obviously mushrooms are more available. You don't need to travel far and to do them well. But once again, don't do it alone. Make sure you're safe. Make sure you have someone there with you. Burn some incense, play some music. Make sure there's at least some sense of physical and spiritual protection. And you don't need to be a shaman to take someone through the ceremony safely. You just need to be caring individual with a good intention. And I mean, at least with mushrooms, with ayahuasca, you definitely need to know a lot. But with the smaller doses of mushrooms, I think they're much more forgiving.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And the point about the setting and the context and the spiritual aspect, because for sure I know friends from my childhood who've taken a lot more mushrooms than I have. Right. It was like a regular part of their experience. And then I asked them, I've asked a couple of them, did it help you to become more spiritual? Have you become more spiritual? And they're like, no, just did them for fun, and they were great. And like they don't see them in that context. It was just a way to escape and have fun. And it didn't form part of any kind of spiritual growth, which I kind of found curious, because I thought, well, maybe just by default, there would be some spiritual opening for them, no matter what context they took them in. But apparently that's not true. Apparently you can take them and it's just a way to escape. And that's the start and end of it.
Yeah, I think that's where intention comes in. Once again, you have a tool, but what is the use of the tool and what is the intention? Because you can take ayahuasca and think about love and helping people, and you will manifest that. But you can take ayahuasca and do witchcraft. It's all about the intention. We set the direction. We choose whether it's for good or for bad, and depending on the container, you can have different outcomes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Sam, we've been going for an hour, and of course, there's been a fantastic conversation. Is there anything we've not touched on that you'd have liked to have talked about?
No, I think it was pretty complete, and we went all over. No, I just my last things I'd like to say is, keep your minds open. There is a way to do ayahuasca safely, affordably, and you don't have to, but if you want to, I think based on what I see, it's a great tool to make your life better.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sam. We're going to put a link to the retreat, to the LaWayra Retreat.
Mm-hmm. Actually, an easy way to find us is if you Google ayahuasca in Colombia, will be somewhere there on top, because our website still is ayahuascaincolombia.com, and LaWayra.com redirects to it.
Okay. And just for people who do want to find it specifically, it's spelled LAWAYRA. Wonderful. And like you say, you're running retreats all the time, so people can book in. That's throughout the year. There's availability for people to come. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Richard. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, it's a fantastic conversation.
I'm looking forward to having you come drink ayahuasca, and then I'll interview you.
It's funny. One of the things we talk about in our leadership development is speaking things into being. I love how you're speaking this into being.
Well, historically, my statistics is from 3 podcasts I attend as a guest, 1 host comes to visit.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll be your 1 in 3. Yeah. It's funny. As I speak to you, I do feel a bit nervous. I do feel a little bit nervous about even the prospect of it. So maybe sometimes that's a sign that it's something to be done, right? If I'm feeling a bit of resistance to it, that's potentially a sign that it's there for growth. But there is also a little bit of social stigma. I got to be completely honest. I work in corporate circles. there's a little bit of me that's like, do I want to be the guy who does ayahuasca? I'm being completely honest. There's a bit of social stigma there.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to work on, to kind of tell people that you can do ayahuasca and be a normal person. You don't have to buy cotton pants or copper cup or crystals. I don't have any.
Yeah. You just, a humble engineer living in the countryside.
Yeah, I'm just
helping people get well.
Just a spiritual engineer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks again, Sam. This has been awesome. Can't wait to get it out there. And if some people come and get help, and I mean, when I reflect on it, like, I got to where I got, and it took me over 10 years. If there are tools out there that can get people to a place of healing faster, then I want to give them airtime on the show. I want to bring those to light and have people experiment with them, because the faster we can all heal, the better it is for everyone.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, Ben.